guys had a few really good questions for me about activation of glutes, strengthening your glutes, hypertrophy of your glutes as well in my Instagram story the other day. So I'm just going to go through and hopefully answer all of those questions for you. If you do come up with any more questions, feel free to drop a comment down below, send me a message, or if you're finding something's going wrong with the exercise, film yourself, send it to me. I'm happy to give you guys some feedback. Before we do get into the exercises, all you're going to need today is, if you've got one, a hard medicine ball or a foam roller. If you don't have one, that's totally fine. We're going to go through some stretching as well as some release before we do our workout. If you do, maybe grab some cans or a backpack with a weight in it. I'm going to be using one of my 5 kilo weights today just because I have one and I don't have any cans. So come up with whatever you want, just something you can chuck on your back, like backpack, hold in front of you, that's fine. I've got all the pets interrupting my videos today, Soxy. If you do have them, grab a glute band, whatever resistance you do want. I'm going to be using a light resistance today, whilst also I'm going to be using a medium resistance. I do occasionally grab the heavy resistance, but I will explain to you why I mostly use the medium, especially if you're starting out. Also really good to use this one, it just depends on your body. So both are fine. So onto the subject of glutes. One of the most important things to know about your glutes before you start trying to work them out is, what do your glutes do? What's the actual function of them in your body? So one of the main functions of your glutes is to drive your hip forward into extension. So for example, when you take a step forward, I'll show you guys quickly. If I'm walking along, I'm going to take a step forward here to create power, because your glutes are designed to be one of the most powerful muscles in your body. I'm going to activate my glute, squeeze forward, and create power to keep walking forward. So super important. Obviously, that's what the extension is, similar to like a deadlift or a squat. You might bend over like this, and now your glutes are going to come on to drive the hip forward and open up and extend at the front of your hip. Another really important function of your glutes is to stabilize your hips. This is one of the most important functions, just because if our hips aren't stable, lots of other things go wrong posturally. So when we talk about stabilizing the hips, it's not just the glutes that stabilize the hips. We also want to look at our lower core region. So our lower core region, our pelvic floor, transverse abdominis, they all help and assist in stabilizing our hips, which is really important. The reason I'm bringing that up is to effectively train your glutes. You need stable hips in the correct position, so we don't want them out of alignment or in tilt. So we're going to need to contract our core and make sure our core is really warm before we get into our glute work as well. This not only is going to increase the intensity of your glute work, but if you are finding that you're feeling an imbalance on one side, you're not engaging a glute as much as the other, this could be the issue. It'll also keep your back and the rest of your body nice and safe, which is our main goal at the end of the day. So often what happens is there's a few different pelvic tilts you can get into. You can be really tight at the front of the hips, or you can be really tight at the back at the insertion of your hamstring. So that's just the top bit of your hamstring, just before the hamstring gets to glute. That can be really tight, and where we tuck our hips underneath. So what they look like, I've got 2 funny names for them actually. We call this one the Instagram model. Sorry guys, no digs at anybody. And then we call this one here the Mr. Bean. The actual names, we've got a posterior tilt and our anterior pelvic tilt. What's happening in both of them is they are getting in the way of you engaging your glutes and using them to their full function. They're either tilted too far under, so you can't totally extend them and go down into something like a deadlift without overstretching your back or putting too much pressure on your back. We also have the other one, the anterior pelvic tilt, which means you're fairly tight at the front of your hips and you're probably going to have trouble contracting your glutes, bringing them forward and using them to stabilize your hips. So one of the most important things before we start getting into all of this is we're going to stretch and we're going to mobilize, so you guys have enough hip mobility to get into the positions that we need you to be getting into to get the best peachy booty you can get. So this is where I'm going to bring out my roller to start. With a roller you can get creative. If you have never foam rolled before, I will give you a heads up, it can be a bit uncomfortable. It's kind of like a massage, you know, where they push onto a tight spot and you think, oh, that kind of hurts. But you know it's doing the right thing. That's about the feeling that you want. If you do feel like you're getting a bruise or the ball is too hard, go get a softer ball, vice versa. If you cannot feel it at all and you're using a really soft ball you're squishing against, you're not feeling anything, or a foam roller that's too soft, go get something a little bit heavier. If you're still not feeling it then, totally fine. Maybe you're just not tight there, and that's okay. So what we're going to start out with first is rolling the front lateral portion of our quad. So, should have come further back. We're just going to roll right down here, so it's still at the front, but it's on that angle, just on the outside of your quad there. So what that's going to help us do is, if you are in this tilt here like this, everything at the front here is kind of shortened and being pulled on. So we're going to roll from the top of our hip to down towards our kneecap, and we do about 10 rolls just to help it release. Okay, so just starting on one leg, I'm going to put one leg out to the side, so my knee's on the ground up here, my other leg is straight. I'm going to twist my foot so it's pointing inwards, or for example my left foot is pointing towards the right now, just to help get on that outside portion of the quad. From there we're going to be rolling all the way down to that knee, all the way back up from the knee to the top of the hip. Just take it slowly, think about your breathing. It's one of the best things you can do. Try not to hold your breath and don't resist the ball, even though you might want to. If you do find a fairly tight spot that feels a bit sore, for me it's about a third of the way down my quad. I just sit on that one for a little bit. I might do a few circles, but I'll mostly just let it relax. Take deep breaths and think about that muscle releasing. Alrighty, I'm going to switch over the other leg. If you're still rolling, that's totally fine. Just hit the pause button, but for the sake of not keeping you guys here for an hour, we'll switch to the other one. Okay, hip just there, same thing. We're going to be rolling down towards that knee on the outer portion. You'll probably notice that one side of your leg isn't as tight, or that, so one leg isn't as tight as the other. Fairly normal, we mostly have one dominant leg, or if you do have a tilt in your hips, sometimes we're just not totally even on each side of the body. But that's what we're working on getting towards right now. Alrighty, so hopping off of that one, we are going to now move on to rolling our glutes. For our glutes, I'm just going to grab out a roller. I personally prefer using a roller than a ball. You can use a ball, totally up to you. But what we're going to do is just sitting on the roller like this. I'm going to lean over onto one hip, so my hips have tilted over to the side. The glute that I'm rolling on that side, I'm going to keep my leg out nice and straight. I'm just going to roll from the top of the glute down to the bottom. The reason we do it one at a time is just because if you roll both at a time, you're mostly just rolling on bone. So you won't get the full benefit that you would rolling both individually. And once again, if you get a sore spot, just lean onto it. Alrighty, I'm going to move over to the other side, but you can spend around 2 minutes on each side. It just depends how sore and tight you are. I'm not super tight today, so I won't spend too long on each side. Alrighty, so if you've made it through all that foam rolling so far, and you're feeling pretty good, that's awesome. It was your first time foam rolling or doing any myofascial release. Good work. I know it can feel a bit uncomfortable, but you've made it through and you will feel better for it. These are one of the best recovery tools that you can use. So if you don't have one, I do recommend getting one. They just increase your recovery so much, you feel so much better. When I found these, I no longer hated leg day or the day after leg day because these saved my life. Alrighty, okay. What we're going to do now is just a few stretches. So the first one being is we're just going to bring one leg to the front like this into a kind of kneeling position. I've got my hands on the inside and I'm just going to be driving this hip at the back here into the ground. Staying up tall, keeping my core on. If you can get down onto your elbows, that's great. Go down onto your elbows, just make sure that you don't have a big curve in your back. Awesome. From there, we're just going to come up and I'm going to sit back onto my other hip, straightening this leg, and then lean forward from the hip. Doing this one, you should feel a fairly good stretch just down the back of your thigh. Really good if you've got tight hamstrings. And once again, moving to the front, pushing this knee out, you'll get a little bit of a stretch on the inner thigh through here and a big stretch at the front of that hip. All right, moving back. Feel free, if you are feeling really tight in any of these positions, to hold that for up to 2 minutes in each position. It'll just be better for you. I might be moving a little bit quick, so just do it at your pace. Okay, from there, we're going to get this front leg and put it down on the front. I'm going to cross it over my body, keeping my hips fairly even. That means they're drawing a straight line across here and matching the straight line of my shoulders. I'm just going to come down onto my elbows and you'll feel a big stretch through here, just through your glute. Take a few deep breaths, just lean in and relax. This is probably one of my favorite stretches. I do this all the time. It's just a nice way to relax. And same thing here, you can hold this one for up to 2 minutes, just depending on how tight you are. I'm going to come up and out of this one now and repeat the same thing on the other side. So, one leg in front, hands in between, and I'm just going to be driving this hip here into the ground, keeping it nice and open. Okay, leaning your hips back. And once again, leaning in from the hip, you'll notice that I was a little bit slouched. We don't want that, as straight as you possibly can. So we have the chain in the right order. That's really important, is keeping everything working, even when you're stretching. So you're stretching your muscles in the right way and in the right areas, is to have the best posture you possibly can while you stretch. Which is why I can't put my arms to the ground on this side, because you'll see I get a big curve right through there. So this is enough for me on this leg. Leaning back. Middy's bored, she thought I was going to take her for a walk, didn't you? One more, coming forward from this one. What we're going to do, the same thing, we're going to pop this leg just in front. Pardon the bare feet, I hope they don't look too dirty. I always work out in bare feet and stretch in bare feet. If there's any of you out there that have flat feet, I could not recommend more where it's safe to do so. Work out with bare feet. You can feel what's going on with your feet better, control the arch, see what's happening in the chain of your leg. So then you can start directing your workouts towards that, so you can reach whatever aesthetic goal you have, but also strengthening your body functionally as well at the same time. Okay. Coming up out of that one there, bring that leg back. Now this one can be a little bit tricky for balance, so if you do have a chair and you want to use it or a wall, go for it. I'm just going to be bringing one leg up in front like this, pushing my hip forward. Also put some padding under the back knee if you can. You'll find it pretty uncomfortable on a hard wooden floor. Okay, from there I'm just going to be bringing my back leg up and leaning forward. So that's a massive stretch for me right down the front of the hip. You might also feel this in the front of your quad. Once again, aiming to keep all of your hips square and everything in line. Same thing here, all these stretches you can hold for up to 2 minutes and just do what feels good for you. If you are new to stretching and you find these really intense, you can also just hold it for 20 seconds. Build it up each day. It will come a time. and perfect hobby to have during isolation. So I've just switched sides there, guys. If you do decide to time it for 2 minutes, try and hold it on the same side for the same amount of time on each side. Coming up from there, this is one of my personal favorites, this one. It was a killer when I first started. I felt it so much in the front of my hips. I've now loosened up through there, so now I just feel it in my glutes. Feeling it in any of those places is totally fine. This one most people will find fairly intense if you are really tight at your hips. So just take it slow, do 20 seconds, release, wait maybe 30 seconds and go back and do another 20 seconds. Okay, just wait for the garbage truck to pass so you can hear me. Alright, so putting this leg down in front, you want a right angle here. So that just means that my calf is in a straight line with my hips. So I don't know if there's a good angle to show that to you guys on, but just like that, we're going to bring the other leg over and on top. So now my ankle is sitting on top of my opposite knee. I have both hips on the ground. My hips are in line with my legs at the front. From there, I'm just going to get one hand under my ankle and one on top of my knee and start pushing my knee down. Take a deep breath and then start leaning forward from the hips as you're ready. This is a really good indication as well on how good your external rotation is of your femur, so that's your thigh bone. If it is really tight, I'd avoid sumo squats. So just have a look at that. The range of motion I've got right now is a little bit tight, but I can still externally rotate. If you're all the way up here, maybe work on it for a little while till you get more to this angle, and then just don't rotate beyond further than that when you are doing strength training. Releasing that side, and we're just going to switch. So bottom leg, right degree angle, switching the other leg on top. And you'll probably notice that this leg is a little bit tighter for me. And leaning forward from the hips when you're ready. Okay, releasing that one, and that is our hips mobilized, rolled, stretched. If you do have any more stretches you want to do there, you can do a hamstring stretch, really anything that's going to loosen up your legs, your back, any area around those hips that you feel like needs a bit more of a loosening, you go for it. That's what I like to do when I warm up. So we're on to the exercise part. Whenever I start with my glutes, I always start, this is before I squat, deadlift, do anything like that, even go for a run, I'll always warm up my glutes. So this is a little bit of a Pilates move that you can use, I'd say like every second day. Just make sure you're stretching out the next day because it's pretty intense and it could feel a little bit sore if you've got slightly underactive or weaker glutes or you just haven't used them in this way before. So make sure you're always doing proper recovery afterwards. What I'm going to do is I'm going to come lay down onto my side here, and you'll notice that my hips are at my legs are at a right degree angle. So it's kind of like I'm sitting on a chair on the ground. So that's straight, then straight back up there. Okay, from there, what we're going to do is you'll notice I'm shortened through here and my hips aren't even. This hip is falling on top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push my hip that way, and you'll notice my waist might come up off the ground a little bit. That's totally fine. To help stabilize through there, I'm going to hold my pelvic floor on really nice and tight. If you've never activated your pelvic floor before, the best thing you can do to activate your pelvic floor is pretend you've got to go to the toilet, but there is absolutely no toilets available. So you're just going to have to hold it really tight. Okay. So once we've got in that, we've got our hips even here, we've got our pelvic floor on, and I just want you to check down towards your knees. I want you to make sure they're both at the same level here, so one's not over the top or back this way of the other one. You want them to both be even. Once you've worked that one out, we're just going to go up and do a clam. We're going to do 10 of each exercise. The most important thing in these exercises is you'll notice I'm trying to stay as still here as possible, and the only thing moving is my femur. It's just twisting right through the socket in the hip and closing. We're going to do 10. Try and do it with the breath, so breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. Last one, breathing in, breathing out. The next one that we're going to do is we're going to twist out a little bit and then lift the whole leg up. Out. Breathing in, breathing out. Keep this whole area here really still. Make sure that you're not rocking your hip back this way and your core is on really tight whilst you continue to do this. That's one of the most common ones I see in this, is as soon as we go to lift our leg, people rock back to create height in the leg, but we don't want that. We want the glute to be lifting the leg. Good work. We've got 3 more after this one. Last one. Awesome. So if you need to give your glute a little bit of a rest there, that might have felt pretty intense for you. Take as long as rest you need. I reckon 10 seconds, 20 seconds, up to you, depending how intense it is. If you can't make the 10 reps of it, do just go for around 8, 6, whatever number feels good for you, but make sure you push yourself just maybe 1 or 2 reps extra than you would normally be inclined to do. From there, we're just going to twist our hip open, same thing, and come to that top position we just had. From there, I'm just going to extend my leg and do some kicks. So I'm literally bending the knee, straightening the knee. Everything here is super still. My thigh isn't moving, it's just holding up in the air. Now, if you're having trouble feeling this one, most people don't, it's pretty hard. Well, I certainly feel it. Just make sure that your knee is pointing up towards the ceiling. We have a tendency to rock it in, or like before, rock our hip back to make it look like it's pointing up. You just want to make sure this is all even still, and you point the knee up by twisting the bone. Okay, 2 more. Awesome. Good work, guys. Coming down from there, we've got 1 more move for you. And we're just going to keep set up. I like to reset in between my moves just to make sure that I'm all in line. Coming back to the top point here, what we're going to do is we're going to do 10 circles with our knee. So as you can see, I'm drawing a circle like this. Knee pointing up. Once you've done your 10 circles, we're just going to go back the other way. 10 back the other way. This is all staying super still, and the only thing moving is my hip. If I do catch myself moving and shortening between here, I'm just going to hold my core a bit tighter. That usually starts to happen when your lower back wants to overtake, so just make sure that core is nice and strong and activated. Great work, guys. That's one side done. Now we're going to go ahead and do the other side. So, setting up again. Just legs at a 90-degree angle here. Hips on top of one another. And core on. Going into that clam. Make sure you check your form and check in with your body partway through your set. You'll find as your glutes get tired that you tend to falter a little bit. Last one. Now the whole leg. Twisting the knee open and lifting up. If you do, I have experienced some people get a little bit of a cramp at the front of their hip like this. If you do start to get a little bit of a cramp, Just in here, just lower your legs down so there's less of an angle here. So you create a bigger angle really here. And keep going. Two more. Alrighty, I'm just going to bring my legs back up. I prefer them up here. We're just going to be lifting ourselves into that top position up here, and we're going to be doing 10 kicks. Making sure that knee's pointing up the whole time, core is on really strong. Awesome work, guys. Coming down, give your glute a quick rest. Make sure you set yourself up properly again. Okay, opening that knee up and going into a circles. 10 circles with the knee one way, 10 circles back the other. And I'm going to go back the other way. Make sure this area is nice and still. We tend to want to do this sometimes and it all goes moving, but we're going to keep it really still. And rest. Good work. Okay, so you should have at least a little bit of a burn going through your glutes from doing that. The first time most people do it, if you do it correctly, it can feel quite sore. So we're going to go into a slightly bigger movement and less targeted on that one area, so less isolated. For anybody that does have a glute band, I'll get you to use it now. Quickly coming to the reason as to why I like to use a slightly lower resistance is often when people push their knees out, they're still falling in. So I'll show you what I mean by that. So when people go to turn their knees out in this exercise, they might do this. So you can see that my feet are pointing in, my knees are falling in, and I'm pushing out here with my outer thigh. What I want is good foot alignment. So you can have slightly angled out, only just a little bit. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to rotate my femur out, which is just this top bone. I'm rotating it out that way. Once I've done that for this exercise, if you've got a weight, just grab a weight. You can have a backpack, you can have it in front of you. You also don't have to use one, totally up to you. So we're just going to go into a squat here, keep driving those knees out, and then when you get to this bottom point, squeeze your glutes to stand back up. The key to this is activation and using the right muscle group. From there, we're just going to take one step out to the side, so we're going to slightly wider squat, and do it again. In, and out to the other side. Make sure those femurs are rotating out the whole time. And making sure at the bottom of your squat, you're squeezing your glutes to stand back up and extend at the top. Last one on this side. I'll post a recommended amount of reps and sets as well at the end of the video for you guys to look at. Okay, keeping that glute band on, we are just going to come and do a glute bridge. So what a glute bridge is, for anybody that hasn't seen or done one before, you're just going to lay down on your back like this, feet bent. Make sure your feet are around hip width apart, and if you're using a glute band, you're able to push against it. Now this is a very controlled movement. We're going to use our core as well. So what we're going to do is we're going to tuck our hips underneath. To do that, we're going to squeeze our glutes. From there, my core's going to turn on, and vertebrae by vertebrae, I'll let you guys take a look. I'm going to be lifting my back up off the ground really slowly,
Once I get to this point here, I'm going to give an extra squeeze to my glutes and extend. So that went from that to an extension. Okay. As I'm going to lower, I'm going to hold tight to that core and vertebrae by vertebrae. Come back down. Don't let go of the glutes at all until that very last spot, bit at the end where your hips hit the ground. Okay, we're going to go back up into that. So tilting, vertebrae by vertebrae off the ground, and then extending. And back down. Make sure you remember to breathe during this one. That's something we all often forget. I generally breathe in as I go up and out as I go down. You can also take lots of little breaths along the way. Remembering the most important thing is the glutes in this one, because that's what we are aiming for. Contract the glutes, that's the area we're trying to build. All these other muscles here supporting, but it's creating the main power of the movement. Okay, I'm going to do one more. Great work, guys. Coming up, I'm just going to take that booty band off and we're going to be standing up and we're going to go into some lunges. So I want nice and wide feet here. Just make sure you're not leaning back like this or leaning forward like this. We still want this core area, nice, strong, neutral, really flat spine through here so we don't get any injuries to our back. All right, core on. We're just going to be dropping our knee down to the ground. The leg at the front, I'm going to squeeze the glute to drive back up. You will be using a bit more of your leg in this exercise, but let's concentrate on that glute. So squeeze, open. Good work. Four more on this leg. Okay, switching sides. You'll notice sometimes I hold my glute while I do it. That's totally fine. If it helps you make a better connection, go for it. Now try and keep the tempo I'm at. You'll notice it's not really fast or really slow, but about 1, 2, 1, 2. The quicker you do it, the less control you'll probably have. And we aren't trying to create a whole heap of quick explosive power. Just a good contraction to build the glute. And 2 more. Last one. Okay, now that you've done that last one, we're going to go on to our last move of the circuit, which is just over here. So if you use a bench or a chair, you can use either one of these. What we're going to do is a hip thrust, but I call it, well, it's a staggered hip thrust. It's going to be one-legged. If you don't have a bench or a chair or something to lean on, you can do this on the ground like a glute bridge. So we'll show you in a second, but most people find that too difficult to start. It's a bit too intense, so I prefer this. And it does just as good of a job. So, leaning back, what I've got here is I've got the bottom of my rib cage area on the side of the bench supporting me. And I'm just going to support my neck with my arms. If you want to weight this one up, chuck a weight onto your hips and hold from there. So to create the stagger, I'm going to lift up one foot onto the toe. What that's going to do is it's going to force me to use my right glute more than my left. This is a great exercise, because you'll probably have one glute stronger than the other, and this should help even it out. So we're going to drop the hips and then simply drive them up. Drop the hip. We don't want to see a lot of motion going on at the front of that body just because we're isolating the glute. Two more. Really think about squeezing that right glute. Now switch legs. I'm going to bring the other leg up into the stagger, just there to support me so I'm nice and even. But it's going to be my left glute driving me up. And you'll notice my upper body is fairly still. I'm not rocking like this. I'm creating that power solely with the glute to extend. And one more. Okay. Whew. Great work, guys. That's our circuit. I'll write it down below so you can remember it. I'll also add in some reps and some sets for you, but that is just a demo of how you do each move. Just a quick reminder that when you do all of these moves, most important thing, if you are focusing on that glute strength, then what you need to do is focus on using the glute. So make sure you create that mind-muscle connection. Once you've got a hold of that and you can really feel your glute working, start adding on some weight that you feel comfortable with. We are going for contraction and activation over load. So if you can't feel your glute, there's no use putting 20 kilos on there. If you were putting 20 kilos on there and you could feel your glute before, but now you feel more of your lower back, just lower it down. That 20 kilos isn't actually going to make you stronger. You're better off doing 10 kilos, great activation. It's still going to burn. It's about how much engagement you get. That is the most important thing when it comes to training. And what you'll notice is you'll get great results from it. Your body will feel better, your muscles will grow better, and you'll feel really good. So also afterwards, have something to eat. Always really good to have some protein to eat after your workout, just because it'll help you repair your muscles. My personal fave, which I'm going to go have after I finish my workout, is I'm going to have a chocolate milk. Yum! Lots of protein in there, a little bit of fat. If you would rather without the fat, light milk is fine too. Just whatever's up to you. Have a piece of chicken. Do whatever. I don't know, have some tofu. Anything with protein. And if you come up with any questions, feel free to ask below and chuck us a little bit of a heart if you're on Instagram or Facebook or a thumbs up. And I hope you guys have a lovely time in ISO. Bye!